I've been holding off to do this video for a while. I don't know why, but I'm really excited about this one. I'm basically got a collection of a bunch of weird, kind of unique things that I have in the studio that I've collected over the years. And although they seem like they're niche things that won't be used very often, funny enough, I've kind of picked some stuff that for the most part, I end up using on most sessions. So it's kind of weird, unique things, but at the same time, I use them a lot, and I'll kind of walk through and show you the instruments and whatnot and tell you why I like them and what I use them for, and you'll get to hear them. So let's dig in and let's see some of the MillSounds unique gear. I'm going to start with this one because this is one of my favorite instruments of all time, and guitar is pretty much the only thing I'm halfway decent at as a musician. But this is basically a high-tuned 12-string guitar by a company out of New York State, I believe, called Valle Instruments. I think that says Avante, but in a nutshell, Valle makes a bunch of really nice, handmade, high-quality instruments that are kind of unique, and the Griffin is one of those models. The normal Griffins run like, I don't know, the handmade ones are like $4,000 or $5,000, so they're ridiculously expensive. But Valle started this Avante line where they've taken some of their cool stuff and they're making it overseas at a little cheaper, well, much cheaper price point. So I think these come in around $1,200, so it's expensive, but not too bad. But essentially, this is like putting a capo on the 10th fret of a guitar, so it's almost a full octave up. It's basically D to D. And the other thing that makes this unique is most 12-string guitars, you have a small string and a big string, small string, big string, and then maybe some unison strings down on the higher ones. This guy is all unison string, so two of the same string, which is very similar to how mandolins are tuned and set up. So you can essentially get some mandolin kind of sounds out of this, but it's like a mandolin on steroids. It's a pretty cool little guitar, and I am just absolutely addicted to it, and I use it all the time. I figured I'd go ahead and mention this guy, but it's really not that unique. You'll see this at a lot of studios, but this is the first kind of nicer acoustic guitar I had when I was a kid. I got this in 8th or 9th grade for Christmas, but I've kept it around. It's a great sounding guitar, but what I've done is I put it in what they call Nashville tuning. So if you buy a set of strings for a 12-string guitar, a normal 12-string where it's big string, little string, big string, little string. If you take the small strings out of a 12-string guitar pack and you just put those on a 6-string and tune it normally, you get a kind of alternate 12-string sound. It's a really cool thing that, if you've got an extra guitar sitting around, this is a really, really cool kind of thing to add to your guitar arsenal, because instead of if you want a 12-string part in your song, instead of just recording a straight up 12-string guitar, you can double it up and play one on a normal tuned guitar and then one on a Nashville, and you can kind of blend to taste between the two pitches, or you can hard pan them left, right, or you can just kind of let it sit on its own just to do some diamonds in a song, just to add some nice space and filler. But yeah, definitely if you've got a guitar sitting around at home that you're not doing anything with, or a cheaper one especially, get a 12-string pack and tune it up in Nashville tuning. It's a really cool technique for the studio. This definitely wins the uniqueness award because this is a one-off. You will never see another one of these. This was custom made for me by a luthier in Azerbaijan in a small town called Lenkaran on the Iranian border. So seriously, I met the guy, I talked to him, we talked about building a weird custom instrument. Basically, it's a Persian style tar. It started as a 4-string, but then I had him put unison strings on the bottom 3, so, and then the top string's just one single bass note. So it's a low-tuned instrument. It's almost like a banjo in a lot of ways, I guess you could say, but it's not. Totally unique sounding, but I'm typically not using this as a centralized instrument when we use it on recordings. It's just used to give us something weird and unique because it's so different sounding, but it's definitely a very cool tool to have sometimes. It's, and the story behind it, I could probably do a whole video on it. But yeah, the Persian tar, the Azerbaijan tar. I won't spend too much time on this snare because they're not that unique. I see a lot of people that have old marching snares, but this one is 15 inches, so it's a little bit bigger around. It's I want to say it's a 56 or a 58, 1958. I can't remember. It's stamped on the inside, but I um I wanted a big sounding marching snare when I first opened up MillSounds, and so I ordered about 5 or 6 of them. And this one sounded the best. And funny enough, it's out of round. It had a lot of issues. I ended up just getting rid of the throw off and putting this 3-position trick throw off, which was life saving. It turned this drum around. But I used to keep fiber skins on it. I've just gone to like Remo Ambassadors now, just more typical, but this gets used more often than you'd think. It's nice and deep sounding, and it's especially useful when you start doing stuff where you don't want to use as many mics, because I think with deeper snares like this, problem when you start multi-miking them and putting a mic underneath too, you'll run into phase problems just because the distance is so big. So this usually gets used when we're doing single mic stuff, or we just want a really easy, to tune deep sounding snare. But I love it. It's a Ludwig 50s, 15 by 12, I think. But it can also be used as a tom. I've done that sometimes, but it's another cool one. I like it. This, again, I say everything's my favorite, but this is probably something I couldn't live without at this point. But this is the most contested instrument in MillSounds, because when I talk about this old 30-inch by 15 or 16-inch deep Slingerland marching kick, people think it's just gonna be some weird sounding kick that's gonna be useless most of the time, and it is not. I'm telling you, I would use this on every single drum recording if people would let me get away with it. But again, most people walk in here and see it set up and kind of laugh and say, how often does that get used? And I say, every day. And then if they're drummers, they sit down and play it and the jaw drops. This is ridiculous. I don't really need to say much more about it. It's a 60s marching drum made by Slingerland, 30 inches. I keep it tuned really low and loose, and there's a good amount of low end in here, but what I love about it is the attack. It is so unique and so perfect. So let's just hear this guy. Last one I want to talk about is the tiny piano, and I think a lot of you that follow my Instagram or watch my other videos are probably rolling your eyes because you're sick of hearing this, because you hear it from me, you hear it from almost every person that comes out here to record. But this guy is so cool, and I kind of fell into it. Lucky enough, a guy in Rogers, Arkansas, a couple of hours from here, was selling it on Craigslist, and he was a piano restorer, so it's in really good shape. It's a Kawai. It's 64 keys. Typically, you'll see them labeled as a Marco Polo piano, but the really unique thing about this is that the register is different. It's not only less keys, but the register starts in the second register, I think A2, and goes up to C7. So 64 keys. And the other unique thing is usually when you're in the second register of the bass notes, those are usually doubled up strings, but this one, it's one single string. And most of those bass notes. And then when you get to the higher strings, it's only two strings. Typical grand pianos and typical uprights, it's three strings. So I know a lot of people that put out sample packs for pianos have been doing kind of single string piano packs lately for music scores and movies and things like that. But this guy, again, I kind of equate it to a parlor guitar. It obviously does not sound as good as a grand piano, and most typical classically trained pianists will probably gawk at this and think it's a gimmick. But for idiots like me that can't really play piano and just write folk music, it's a very inspiring instrument, and it sounds very cool. You will never get this sound out of another piano. It's that simple.